I sat quietly in the kitchen, gently holding the white ceramic cup in my hands. The warmth from the coffee spread, soothing some of the coldness in my heart. The morning light filtered through the window, casting soft rays on the worn wooden table. It should have been a peaceful morning, but the atmosphere in the house was suffocating. Josh, my husband, paced back and forth on the creaky wooden floor. His heavy footsteps and irritated gaze made the small room feel even smaller. I didn't need to look up to feel his anger, looming over us like a storm on the horizon. The argument from last night still lingered between us, like a fog refusing to dissipate. Last night Josh had asked me to give my credit card to his sister Megan to help her with an emergency. But I knew all too well that Megan's emergencies were nothing more than impulsive shopping sprees or spontaneous trips. This wasn't the first time she had asked for money, and I was certain it wouldn't be the last. "Megan just needs a little help," Josh had said, his voice a mix of gentleness and unwavering resolve. "She's family. Family helps each other, right?" I had tried to stay calm, responding with measured words. "Josh, I understand. But we have our own limits. We can't keep paying for Megan's mistakes. She needs to learn to take responsibility." My words were like gasoline on a fire. Josh immediately exploded, his voice echoing through the house. "You don't understand anything. You don't have siblings. You don't know what it's like to take care of family." I stayed silent, not wanting to escalate the argument. I knew any reasoning would be pointless. We had been through this cycle too many times. Every time it ended with me giving in and Megan walking away with more money to waste. But not this time. I had made my decision, and I wouldn't change it. This morning I sat there, quietly sipping the bitter coffee. The bitterness on my tongue mirrored the sadness in my heart. Josh kept pacing, his footsteps tapping against my patience. Each time he passed by, I could feel his gaze piercing through me, filled with silent pressure and unspoken threats. "We need to talk, Josh," I said, breaking the oppressive silence. "We can't keep going like this. Megan needs to learn to be independent. It will be good for her and for us." Josh stopped, turning sharply toward me. His face was flushed, lips pressed tightly as if holding back an eruption. "You're so selfish, you know that? My family needs help and all you think about is yourself." I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice gentle but firm. "I'm not being selfish. I'm trying to protect our own family. We can't keep cleaning up after others. Megan needs to grow up, and sometimes the best help is not helping." "You don't understand anything," Josh shouted, his voice shattering the fragile peace in the kitchen. "Who do you think you are to judge my sister? You don't have a family, so you don't know anything about loyalty." His words cut through me like a knife. I tightened my grip on the cup, feeling its warmth failing to chase away the coldness seeping into my bones. "I may not have siblings," I responded, my voice quiet but resolute. "But I understand responsibility, and right now our responsibility is to maintain stability in our own family. We can't keep going on like this, Josh." He stood still for a moment, his shoulders seemingly slumping. I thought, perhaps, my words had finally reached him. But as hope flickered, his expression hardened. "You are going to give your credit card to Megan," he said, his voice low and threatening. "She'll be here this afternoon, and you'll hand it to her with a smile. Do you understand?" A shiver ran down my spine. Josh's tone had shifted from pleading to commanding, but I knew I couldn't back down. "No, Josh, I won't do that. If she really needs help, we can find another way. Maybe help her create a budget or find a financial advisor. But I won't give her my credit card." My words seemed to ignite his fury. Before I could react, he lunged for his coffee cup on the counter. Time seemed to slow as I saw his hand rise, and then the dark liquid arced through the air, crashing onto my face. I gasped, the scalding heat spreading across my skin. My breath came in ragged bursts, not just from the physical pain but from the shock. The cup clattered to the floor, shattering into tiny white shards, like the sharp fragments of my breaking heart. Josh stood there, his face red and his voice roaring. "You'll pay for this. When Megan gets here, you better do exactly what I said or else." I couldn't hear the rest. Everything blurred into chaos. The man who once held my hand at our wedding, who had promised to love and protect me, was now standing before me with a cold gaze and words as sharp as knives. I slowly raised my hands to my face, feeling the raw heat of my skin and the sticky coffee clinging to me. I looked at Josh. At the kitchen that had once been a sanctuary of peaceful mornings, and now it was nothing but a battlefield of brokenness and pain. I stood there, breathing heavily, my face stinging from the hot coffee. The physical pain was nothing compared to the ache in my heart. Everything around me felt alien, as if I had walked into someone else's home, not the place I once called my own. The beautiful memories had become nothing but a fragile shell, barely covering the deep cracks of a marriage long decayed. Josh left the house after shouting threats, the door slamming shut, tearing apart the already fragile silence. I collapsed onto the chair, the kitchen towel in my trembling hands, dabbing at the coffee dripping from my hair onto my collar. Sharp waves of pain radiated through my skin, but I sat still, frozen by an invisible fear. The cold from the floor seeped into my bare feet, dragging me back to the harsh reality. I can't stay here anymore, the voice in my head echoed, stronger and clearer than ever. The images of what had just happened flashed through my mind, the shattered cup, Josh's fierce gaze, the burning sensation of coffee on my skin. All were undeniable signs that I could no longer ignore. With hands still shaking, I reached for the phone on the kitchen counter. The screen displayed old messages, missed calls from friends I had gradually distanced myself from. Josh didn't like me socializing too much, and I had unknowingly allowed myself to fall into isolation. But there was still one name that made me pause: Clara. My best friend from college, the only one who never turned her back on me despite my countless refusals to meet. Clara always checked in, always left encouraging messages, even when I didn't respond. My fingers trembled as I dialed Clara's number. The phone rang, each tone stretching into eternity. I almost gave up, but then her warm voice broke through. "Hello? Lena?" Hearing her voice, I burst into tears, all the pent-up emotions finally spilling over. "Clara, I need help." Clara didn't ask questions. She simply said, "I'm on my way. Don't worry about anything." I hung up, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders, as if I had grabbed onto a lifeline in a cold, endless ocean. I wiped my face, trying to regain composure. If I wanted to leave, I had to act quickly. Josh could come back at any moment. I opened the bedroom door. The room that once felt warm and safe now seemed cold and foreign. I pulled out an old suitcase from under the bed. We had used this suitcase during our honeymoon in Napa Valley. Back then, I thought I had found a peaceful harbor. But it turned out to be nothing but an illusion. I began packing, prioritizing the most important items: clothes, personal documents, and my laptop. I opened the drawer, feeling for the small box containing the jewelry I had inherited from my mother. I didn't want to leave anything behind, not wanting to give Josh any reason to think I would return. In the corner of the closet, I pulled out a small metal box carefully hidden. Inside was a wad of cash, the money I had been saving for months. Every time I went shopping or ran errands, I kept a bit of change, silently building a nest egg like a little bird. I didn't know why I had done it, but now I was grateful for my own foresight. When the suitcase was full, I returned to the kitchen, where shards of the broken cup still lay scattered on the floor. I knelt down, carefully picking up each piece, as if gathering the fragments of my own shattered self. Each sharp piece of porcelain reminded me of my broken marriage, of the hopes that once flowed warmly, now reduced to emptiness. The doorbell rang, startling me. I stood up, my hands still clutching the cold shards. My heart pounded in my chest, fear weighing down my steps. But then, the familiar voice of Clara called out, "Lena, it's me." I rushed to the door, seeing Clara standing there with worry etched on her face. Without a word, she wrapped me in a tight embrace, her warmth like a flame driving away the cold. I felt the strength and safety radiating from her, as if all the pain was just a bad dream. "I've got the car ready, we're leaving right now," Clara said, her voice both gentle and determined. "You don't need to bring much. I have everything you need." I nodded, pulling the suitcase behind me. As I crossed the threshold, I looked back at the house one last time. The pristine white walls, the wooden table we had chosen together, the wedding photo still hanging on the wall. All were remnants of a life I no longer belonged to. Clara took my hand, guiding me to the car. When the door closed, I felt an invisible line being drawn. From this moment on, I was no longer the Lena of the past, no longer the submissive and fearful wife. I was stepping into a new journey, a journey to find myself. The car moved forward and the small house faded in the rearview mirror. I felt a sense of relief as if a heavy backpack had been lifted from my shoulders. Clara turned on soft music, the gentle melody soothing me into a rare sense of safety. We didn't speak much during the drive, but Clara's presence was a solid anchor. I didn't need to explain or justify myself, only to know that I was not alone, and at that moment, that was all I needed. Outside the window, the soft golden sunlight bathed the narrow streets, weaving through the lush green trees. The scenery passed by like a slow-motion film, each frame a reminder that life was still moving forward, and I, no matter how many storms I had weathered, still had the chance to start over. Clara brought me to her home in the peaceful suburbs of New Haven. The two-story house with its wide porch and vibrant petunia pots immediately gave me a sense of warmth and safety. I stepped into the home, filled with the cheerful noise of Clara's two kids, 8-year-old Emily and 5-year-old Jake. They ran to hug my legs, bringing a smile to my face, a feeling of finally returning to a real family. The living room was flooded with natural light, with children's drawings hanging on the walls, each line and color holding the innocence and happiness of youth. I looked around and saw Tom, Clara's husband, smiling warmly at me. He quickly brought out a cup of hot tea, placing it gently in my hands. "Welcome home, Lena," he said, his deep blue eyes filled with genuine care. The first evening passed in a peace I had long forgotten. We had dinner together, the aroma of roasted chicken and homemade garlic bread filling the room. The kids shared funny stories from school, and Clara and Tom exchanged loving glances now and then. The simple, warm family scene eased the tightness in my chest, as if the wounds in my heart had begun to heal. After dinner, Clara and I sat in the kitchen, sipping peppermint tea. She gently asked about everything, not just about Josh, but also about me, about what I wanted to do next. When I mentioned needing a lawyer, Clara immediately brought up Sarah Thatcher, an old friend of hers. "Sarah is really good at helping women who want to get out of toxic relationships," Clara said. "I'll call her first thing tomorrow morning." The next morning, Clara and I went to Sarah's office. I was so nervous that my hands twisted together under the table. Sarah's office was in an old building with red brick walls and large windows overlooking a green park. She greeted us with a warm smile, her bright brown eyes and professional yet approachable demeanor immediately putting me at ease. "I'm so glad you reached out to me, Lena," Sarah said after listening to my story. "First, we need to make sure you're safe. I'll help you apply for a temporary protection order, and we can start the divorce process whenever you're ready." Sarah talked about my legal rights, how to protect my finances and personal assets. She explained how the divorce process would work, and I felt like the fog in my mind was beginning to lift. What had once been an invisible fear had now become specific, achievable steps. On the way back, Clara suggested I find a job to help rebuild my life. "Do you remember Isabella, my cousin? She just opened a small bookstore in the town center. I can ask if she needs any help." The idea of working in a bookstore unexpectedly warmed my heart. I had always loved books, had once dreamed of becoming a writer before those dreams were crushed during my years with Josh. I nodded, feeling a small spark of hope reignite within me. The next day I met Isabella at her bookstore, the Cozy Nook. The place felt like stepping into another world, tall bookshelves reaching the ceiling, warm golden lights, and the comforting scent of new paper mixed with fresh coffee from the small cafe inside. Isabella, with her short hair and radiant smile, immediately made me feel at ease. "Clara told me about you," Isabella said as we sat in a corner of the cafe. "This store is my dream, but I really need someone to help out. Would you like to give it a try?" Without hesitation, I nodded. "I'd love to. I need to start over somewhere, and this seems like a wonderful place to do that." From the very first day, I fell in love with the work at the bookstore, organizing new arrivals, recommending books to customers, and especially the peaceful moments sitting in the cozy corner reading, all made me feel like I was slowly rediscovering myself. Each day that passed, I felt stronger, more confident, and less haunted by my past. Isabella was not only a great boss, but also a new friend. She always found ways to encourage me, from small things like picking a good book to genuinely supportive words when she noticed I seemed withdrawn. "You're starting over, Lena," she said one day as we arranged newly arrived books, "and I believe you'll find your path." Every afternoon, as the sunset cast a golden hue through the bookstore windows, I would sit in the cafe corner, watching people go by and wondering where this new life would lead me. Bit by bit, I began writing in my journal again, capturing my thoughts and feelings. Writing became my outlet, helping me realize I still had so much to say, so many stories to tell. Even though the road ahead held challenges, I knew I was no longer alone. I had Clara, her family, Isabella, and a job that made me feel valued. And most importantly, I had myself. A stronger, braver Lena than ever before. One autumn afternoon, the soft sunlight filtered through Clara's living room window, casting a gentle glow on the plush carpet. I sat in the armchair, flipping through a new book borrowed from Isabella's bookstore, but my mind couldn't focus. The peaceful days with Clara's family felt like a sweet dream, but I always knew the storm wasn't truly over. Clara had taken the kids to the park, and Tom was still at the office. The house was so quiet I could hear every tick of the clock. Suddenly, the doorbell rang, breaking through my thoughts. My heart pounded, a bad feeling creeping in. I gently pulled back the curtain and peeked outside. The familiar black car was parked right in front of the house, and I immediately recognized Josh's license plate. Alongside him was Megan, her usual confident expression still intact, but there was a sharp resolve in her eyes. My hands shook, clutching the phone in my pocket tightly. Sarah had warned me to always be cautious, never to open the door when I was home alone. But before I could think of what to do, the pounding on the door began, forceful and filled with threat. "Lena, open the door!" Josh's voice boomed, laced with impatience. "I know you're in there!" I backed away, my heart racing. Sarah's words echoed in my mind. "Lena, you have the right to protect yourself. Don't let them control you anymore." "Lena, don't be so childish," Megan said loudly, her voice cold and sharp. "Do you think you can hide forever? Are you really going to abandon my brother in this situation?" I closed my eyes, reminding myself to stay calm. I didn't owe them anything. I had the right to live my own life. I quickly texted Clara. "Josh and Megan are here. I'm not opening the door." Immediately after, I called Sarah. She picked up right away, her voice warm but cautious. "Lena, what's going on?" "Josh and Megan are outside Clara's house," I whispered. "They want me to go back and give money to Megan." "Don't open the door," Sarah reminded me. "I'm on my way. If they try to force entry, call the police." I put the phone down, focusing on steadying my breathing. Outside, the banging on the door grew louder, stronger, and more threatening. "Lena, if you don't open this door, I'll come in myself." Josh's voice grew harsher. "You think you can just walk away without taking responsibility? You owe my family." A wave of anger rose within me. Owe them? I had given up so many dreams, sacrificed my freedom and self-respect for him and his family. It was time for me to reclaim my life. About 10 minutes later, the sound of a car horn echoed outside. Through the window, I saw Sarah stepping out of her silver SUV, her professional attire and high heels only adding to her authoritative aura. She approached the door, her expression calm, but her eyes unwavering. "Josh, Megan, what are you doing here?" Sarah's voice was clear and strong. "None of your business," Megan shot back, but her voice lacked the confidence it usually held. "Actually, this is exactly my business," Sarah responded, pulling out her attorney's card. "I am Lena's legal representative. According to the temporary protection order, you are not allowed to approach her. If you don't want legal trouble, I suggest you leave immediately." Josh hesitated, his eyes wide with surprise. "You think you can stop me? Lena is my wife. I have a right to talk to her." Sarah remained composed. "Lena has filed for divorce. From now on, all communication will go through your attorney. If you do not leave, I will have to call the police." Megan tugged on her brother's arm, her face paling. "Let's go, Josh. Don't make a scene." Josh continued to stare at the door, his expression shifting from anger to desperation. "Lena, please, I just want to understand why you're doing this." Sarah stepped forward, placing herself firmly between them and the door. "Josh, it's too late. You need to respect Lena's decision." Finally, Josh dropped his hands, lowered his head, and turned away. Megan, however, couldn't resist a final threat. "You'll regret this, Lena. You can never escape my family." Sarah crossed her arms, her gaze steely. "This is your last warning. Leave now or face legal consequences." As the black car pulled away from the house, I realized I had been holding my breath. Sarah opened the door, stepping inside with a gentle smile. "They're gone. Are you okay?" Tears streamed down my face, but this time they were from relief, not fear. "Thank you, Sarah. I don't know what I would have done without you." Sarah sat down next to me, holding my hand tightly. You are incredibly strong, Lena. Standing up for yourself is never easy, but you did it. This is just the beginning, but I believe you'll get through all of it. For the first time in months, I truly believed I could rebuild my life, break free from the cycle of control and toxicity of the past, and most importantly, I knew I was no longer alone on this journey. In the days following Josh and Megan's appearance at Clara's door, I slowly began to feel true relief. It was as if a heavy backpack had been lifted off my shoulders. I started breathing more deeply and appreciating the crisp morning air. Clara and her family's presence helped me find a sense of home again, but I knew that to truly heal, I needed to start building my own independent life. One Saturday morning, while sipping a hot cup of coffee by the window, I came across a flyer for a community yoga class. Find inner peace. The bold letters on the pastel-colored paper seemed to whisper directly to me. I used to love yoga. It was a time when I connected with myself, but during my years with Josh I had forgotten that passion. I decided to try the class. The yoga studio was in a small cultural center near Isabella's bookstore. The room was filled with natural light, yoga mats spread out across the polished wooden floor. The instructor, Mia, a woman in her 40s with a gentle voice and a warm smile, welcomed me with a light hug. Just relax and listen to your body, Lena, she said, as if she could see the wounds I carried. The first session was not easy. My body was stiff, every stretch brought discomfort, but every time Mia guided us to breathe deeply and let go of worries with each breath, I felt layers of heaviness in my mind being washed away. In the final Savasana pose, lying on the mat with my eyes closed, I could hear the peaceful rhythm of my own heartbeat. It was a feeling I had long forgotten, the feeling of inner peace. Clara noticed the change in me. You look so much brighter, Lena. I'm so glad you've found something that makes you happy. Every evening after the kids had gone to bed, we would sit together in the armchair, sipping herbal tea and talking about future plans. Clara always encouraged me to write again, knowing how much I used to love creating stories. Why don't you try keeping a journal? She suggested. It doesn't have to be fancy, just write down what you feel. It could be a way for you to process your emotions. I started writing, initially just short lines about my feelings each day, but gradually stories began to take shape. I wrote about a brave woman weathering the storm, about the journey of finding oneself after the darkness. Each page felt like a step forward on my path to healing. Working at the bookstore also made me fall in love with life again. Isabella, with her enthusiasm and positive energy, always found ways to make each workday enjoyable. On quiet afternoons when the customers had gone, we would sit by the cash register sipping chamomile tea and sharing our favorite books. Isabella even suggested I write a few book reviews for the store's blog. You have such a genuine way with words, Lena. I'm sure our customers will love what you share. Gradually I began to earn a stable income and started thinking about finding a space of my own. Sarah, with her thoughtful and dedicated approach, helped me manage the legal proceedings of my divorce. She also encouraged me to bravely look for a small apartment, a place where I could truly start over. I found a charming studio apartment in the suburbs. It wasn't big, but it had a window overlooking a green park, a compact kitchen, and a cozy nook where I could set up a writing desk. On moving day, Clara, Tom, and both kids helped me organize everything. Their laughter and bustling footsteps filled the space with life. The kids were excited to help me decorate with small potted plants, and Emma even made a handmade card that read, "Wishing Miss Lena lots of joy in her new home." When Clara and her family left, I sat on the small sofa, looking around the room with a heart full of gratitude. Everything in this apartment was mine, from the small paintings on the walls to the warm bedside lamp. This was truly my space, a place where I could be myself. That evening, I lit a scented candle, played my favorite music, and sat down at my desk. The computer screen displayed a blank page, but this time I wasn't afraid of the emptiness. Instead, I felt a new surge of energy. I placed my hands on the keyboard and the words began to flow. Today I officially start over. The gentle words fell onto the screen, each one a step forward on the path to freedom. I knew there would still be challenges ahead, but this time I felt strong enough to face anything. The night had already fallen outside, but in my small room the light remained on. I wrote until my fingers ached, until I truly felt I had found myself again. A stronger, freer Lena, filled with hope. I sat by the window of my small apartment, the soft glow of the evening sun filtering through the white curtains, casting gentle patterns on the wooden floor. In front of me, my laptop remained open with my nearly finished manuscript. The Awakening. That was the title of my first novel. A story about the journey of finding oneself. Not just mine, but also that of many other women out there. My novel was almost complete. Each page was a step forward, each little story within carried hope and strength. I wrote about sleepless nights, about pain and heartache, but I also didn't forget to write about the glimmers of light, about the hands that reached out to me when I needed them most. A message popped up on my phone screen. It was Clara. "Still coming over tonight? The kids are so excited." I smiled, replying immediately, "Of course, I'll bring a few new chapters for you to read." I stood up, stretched, and stepped out onto the balcony. The cool air carried the gentle scent of wildflowers from the roadside. I looked down at the small street, where children played, their laughter echoing through the air. A sense of peace wrapped around me, as if all the past hurts had truly been left behind. Since moving into this apartment, I had found a new rhythm of life. Every morning, I woke up early, brewed a fragrant cup of coffee, and began to write. My job at Isabella's bookstore made me feel valued, meeting people who loved books and hearing their stories. Isabella had even started planning a book signing event for me if The Awakening got published. The thought filled me with both excitement and motivation. That evening I went to Clara's house. Her warm home, filled with soft yellow lights and the smell of freshly baked goods, instantly made me feel welcome. The kids ran to hug me, their small embraces overflowing with love. Tom was busy grilling in the backyard, sharing funny stories that kept everyone laughing. In that moment I realized I had truly found a family, not through blood, but through genuine love and connection. Clara and her family showed me that no matter how many storms I had faced, I could still find a rainbow. When dinner ended, Clara pulled me aside, her eyes bright with excitement. "I have good news for you," she whispered. "Sarah just called me. Your divorce has been approved by the court. All the paperwork is finalized. You are officially free, Lena." My heart seemed to stop for a moment, and then the emotions burst forth. I hugged Clara tightly, tears streaming down my face, but this time they weren't tears of sorrow. They were tears of liberation, of joy, and of hope. I was truly free, not only legally but also in my soul. That night, when I returned to my apartment, I opened the windows, letting the cool night breeze fill the room. I sat at my desk, reopened the manuscript I had been working on. The cursor blinked steadily on the blank screen, but this time, I knew exactly what I wanted to write. Tomorrow is a new day. I used to be afraid of each morning, but now, I embrace it with gratitude. The sun will rise and I will continue walking my own path with an open heart and a free spirit. This is not just the end of an old chapter, but the beginning of a bright new one in my life. I clicked save, closed my laptop, and stepped out onto the balcony. On the horizon, the city lights sparkled like stars, reminding me that life goes on, that so many beautiful things are still waiting for me ahead. I took a deep breath, feeling the breeze caress my skin. Everything was peaceful, and I knew that at last I had found myself. My story was still unfolding, but this time, I was the one holding the pen, writing new chapters with courage and love for myself. Lena's story is not just a journey of overcoming pain and finding oneself, but also a testament to the inner strength that lies within each of us. In real life, we all face challenges, sometimes even deep wounds from toxic relationships or unfair circumstances. However, just as Lena did, as long as we are brave enough to set boundaries, love ourselves, and seek help when needed, everything can change. Life always offers new opportunities to those who stand up and continue writing their own story. What do you think of Lena's journey and her courageous decision? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to hit follow to stay tuned for more meaningful and real-life stories about family life in upcoming videos.